The name Hugh Hefner may not be the first name that comes to mind in any discussion of the rise of the female. In fact, I think that there are many militant feminists who consider that he may well be the perfect Antichrist, the devil who infantilized and commodified young, naked, big-breasted women. And yet he also did a lot to bring about a certain kind of sexual freedom in our culture, particularly here in North America, including the heretical idea that women had an equal right to like it and to do it just because it felt good. He was a fighter and a funder for many progressive causes, but has never been forgiven by the commentariat for his ostentatious lifestyle and his very successful hedonism. So here to put this legendary lover of countless beautiful women in context is a woman, Brigitte Berman. Hey, Brigitte.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Moses, for this great introduction of an amazing man. And yes, he's considered either the devil or, as you know, a man who has done a lot for women, men, everybody. I just want to start by saying I've made many documentaries, and I always like to find a documentary that deals with complex individuals and that has a lot of conflict in it. That's what I really try to look for. With Hugh Hefner, you couldn't get more conflicts and you couldn't get more complex. And he was really ideal. And I had met him many years ago because I had made a film about a musician called Bix Beiderbecke. And one of the glorious circles in life, Bix Beiderbecke just happened to be Hefner's favorite jazz musician. So a few years later, Mary O'Connor called me from the Playboy Mansion and said, Mr. Hefner would love to get a copy of your film. And I thought, Playboy Mansion? I must be kidding. And I said, have him put it in writing. And so a few days later, I got a letter. Got a letter from Hef. And he said how much he liked the film and would I send it to him. And of course I did. And from that time on, we became friends. And we became friends over music, jazz, film. He is a encyclopedia on film, and I went down to many film nights, movie nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to get to know the people, his friends, and to really enjoy the mansion, a most glorious place, I must tell you. It is really a paradise. But first, I would like to start with a clip, because we all know, the world mainly knows Hugh Hefner as a lover of women, as a playboy. So let's look at that and listen to Gene Simmons.
Any guy of any age, anywhere in the world, at any time in history, today or tomorrow, that wouldn't give his left nut to be Hugh Hefner at 20, at 50, at 80. Living the lifestyle he lives, with beautiful women who adore him, happy beyond what any human being has a right to be happy.
That's Hefner, age 82, doesn't look it, I don't think, on his birthday in Las Vegas, when I was filming him. When Playboy came about in 1953, we all know this magazine came out and it had all these sexy women in it and naked women, but it also had great articles. And it came out in December 53, no date on it, only Marilyn Monroe on the cover. And very quickly, America was outraged. Puritan, straight-laced America just hated and didn't want to know and didn't want to see. This wasn't the way you were supposed to do things. And where did Hefner come from? They weren't ready for him. And on the other hand, though, many did read it and read it for the articles, as they always said. So there were a lot of critics who came out in writing in magazines and interviewed Hefner again and again. One of the first was Mike Wallace, many years ago in the mid-50s. And let's listen to what Mike Wallace had to say about Hugh Hefner. Please.
Good evening, I'm Mike Wallace. The show is Night Beat. Our first story is Hugh Hefner, and we'll try to find out why he really did start Playboy and whether or not it's just a smutty story.
I don't know whether he stumbled, got lucky, or what, but he took the opportunity to lower the standards.
I think that you'll agree it's a sniggering kind of sex, it's a lascivious kind of sex. It certainly isn't a healthy approach to sex. You would suggest that it is.
I would not only suggest it, I would say rather strongly, we consider it a pretty healthy attitude.
But I was not persuaded.
Interestingly enough, though, Mike Wallace, unlike a lot of the other enemies, quote, enemies, he did turn around about Hefner. And he actually, a book was brought out about the interviews, the many famous interviews, and Mike Wallace wrote the foreword. So there is a nice kind of arc in the film, the early Mike Wallace to the later Mike Wallace. Other critics, all over in the film, George Keating, the Citizen for Decent Literature, he founded that group, and Jerry Falwell, and the conservative Buckley, and Dennis Prager. The feminist, of course, Susan Brown Miller, fabulous woman. Unfortunately, Gloria Steinem, who we saw earlier, absolutely refused to be in the film. Unfortunately. We see her picture, though. Anyway, because she was a bunny for a short while to try to find out more about the Playboy Club. Anyway, these enemies and people who were against him, it's all in the film. But at the same time, what I also take a look at, and why I made the film, was to show the other side of Hugh Hefner. The side that people don't really know. The side, the activist for freedom, civil liberties, freedom of expression, First Amendment rights, human rights in general. And he did that very, very early on, both in the magazine and on his 2 TV shows, Playboy's Penthouse in 1959 and Playboy After Dark in 1969. In the 50s, we all know about the Red Scare, the Un-American Activities Committee that was rampant in the United States. Any communist, anybody like that smacked of it, their career was ruined. People like Larry Adler, the incredible harmonica player, was not allowed on TV shows. Pete Seeger was not allowed on TV shows. But guess what? They were allowed on Hefner's TV shows. And he just stuck his neck out. He didn't care. These were his friends, and he was going to have them on his show, no matter what anybody said. It was that kind of very outspoken public stances that Hefner took throughout his entire life that put him on the enemies list of Hoover, of Nixon, and of Reagan. And so he was under real scrutiny for quite a few years. But at the same time, he also made friends with a lot of black people. They became his friends. It was a time of segregation. He didn't care about that. When he opened up his first Playboy Club in Chicago, and then a franchise was opened up in Miami and New Orleans, when the black key members went to Miami, they were told they couldn't come in. The doors were locked. And when Hefner found out about that, he bought back the clubs at a loss and ran them himself, and everybody could come in, black or white, it didn't matter. And so people like Jesse Jackson became his friends. Dr. Martin Luther King became one of his friends. Dick Gregory, the great comedian, broke the color line in the Chicago Playboy Club. And civil rights was a huge, huge issue for him that he truly also fought for. And one last clip we'll take a look at.
It was Jesse who brought Martin Luther King to the mansion in Chicago. He was there trying to deal with segregation in Chicago. And what followed was a close friendship with both, particularly with Jesse.
I was attracted to him basically because he was so committed to Dr. King. And And when Dr. King was killed, I mean, the outpouring of support and affection coming from Hef was significant in my mind at that time.
We published the last piece ever written by Martin Luther King, and we published it shortly after his death. His widow actually edited it. There is an outrageous incongruity of it all, of course, that we should be sitting there in the Hef pad listening to Martin Luther King's dream. Yes, well, people don't recognize or realize the extent to which it was part of my dream too.
And so there's the Hef and the pipe and the robes and Playboy. That's his brand name. But then there's Hef, the serious thinker, activist, and the magazine was used as a tool.
Racial equality was still being fought over on college campuses and in major cities across the country. The Vietnam War was going on. At the same time, there was the Summer of Love and just an extraordinary change in social sexual values.
When I set out to make this film, I didn't want to whitewash Hugh Hefner. What I really wanted to do was to set the record straight, to show a man in a way that the world doesn't really know him, and show parts about him which actually, as it turns out, some people don't even want to know. Some of the people I interviewed for the film, like Susan Brown Miller, didn't want to hear about the stuff he did. And that's okay, I thought that's fine. What was interesting for me was then when my late mother said to me, you know, Brigitte, you're going to have to be really strong because you're going to get caught up in Hugh Hefner's controversy. And I said, oh, please, really, you know, it's a film, you know. And sure enough, she was right, because what is happening very often now is that people really take their anger and their upset at Hugh Hefner out at the film, at him always, of course. And weird things are happening, like in Whistler, there was my distributor tried to get somebody to come and see the film, and she said, absolutely not, a film about Hugh Hefner? No way. And in Miami, a festival director had a lot of flack from her board just for having the film in her festival. So it goes on and on and on. But at the same time, I feel incredibly, incredibly privileged because Hef gave me total freedom. I had total access to whatever I wanted, complete creative freedom, which he'd never given before. And that was a privilege and a responsibility. He was a friend, but I'm a filmmaker first. So here I was telling a story that was going to be both sides, yay and nay. And there's no narration in the film. So in the end, it's up to however people feel about it. They can take what they wish from the film, and the audience can look at it for better or for worse. What was his influence? What was his impact? It's completely up to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming here.
Thank you.
To share that with us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.